Just shy of 1 year ago, Southwest Florida lost its first life to COVID-19.
Today, flags fly at half-staff to honor that life and everything the pandemic took from us.
And next on ABC 7, we too will honor that loss, but also tell stories of hope from our Southwest Florida community.
A special edition of ABC 7 News at 7 starts in 45 seconds.
Good evening. We're going to start with some breaking news tonight at 11. Two big developments about coronavirus. The first deaths in Florida. Like invisible venom, the coronavirus swarmed Southwest Florida. It took grandparents and friends, parents, and even kids.
He would give you the shirt off his back.
The pandemic made us fear human contact. A year without hugs. It ripped our comfort, our closure, and our communication.
I just felt lost.
All year, we read data, saw sickness, and heard about death.
We've all lost this year.
But it's important to remember, these are not just case numbers. They were names.
But I think I miss his laugh the most.
These are families now trying to fight back from the loss. And tonight, ABC 7 is here to tell their stories, hoping to repair our community, which COVID ravaged.
We were helpless.
Tonight on ABC 7, these are our stories.
The way that he deserves to be celebrated, and that's going to get us through.
This week marks 1 year since Southwest Florida suffered its first COVID-19 death.
It was March 6, 2020, the start of a life-changing year we'll never forget.
So tonight, ABC 7 is doing something different. We are marking 1 year, not by counting cases, but by focusing on names, the people this pandemic impacted the most. I'm Jeff Butera.
And I'm Krista Fogelsong. Over the next half hour, we're sharing those stories of loss, but we're also sharing stories of hope.
And we're going to start tonight with a Naples firefighter who dedicated his life to fighting fires, but in the last year, lost a different battle. Naples firefighter Tony Christensen had a nickname because of his size and the size of his heart.
Gentle Giant.
But after talking to his fellow firefighters, he had me thinking of a different nickname. Believe it or not, Swiss Army knife.
He was definitely our Swiss Army knife, so to speak, for our department.
Because just like a Swiss Army knife can do so many different things, so could Tony. So many things for the Naples Fire Department.
Tony was a little bit of everything. A seasoned firefighter with over 20 years of experience.
Really great guy.
You know, crack a good joke and get the crew laughing. He always took the new guys under his wing.
If you were having a hard time, Tony would listen.
And then he was always the mentor.
He was very wise. He had a lot of wisdom.
It feels like Tony shared a bond with almost every Naples firefighter.
It feels...
But none stronger than with Pete DeMaria,
I keep looking for the end.
fire chief, because their bond stretched back 40-plus years to their high school days together on Florida's East Coast.
I lost my brother when I was young. He never had a brother, and we always just counted on each other to fill those roles.
They'd vowed to look out for each other, which is why what happened last summer was so hard to take. A firefighter got exposed to COVID on a call. The virus spread around the firehouse. Tony got it and couldn't beat it. A fire chief who had spent his life helping others couldn't do a thing for his best friend.
We were helpless.
You were powerless.
Completely.
Tony died in August. That was more than a half year ago. And yet...
Sometimes I don't feel like I've processed it completely yet.
So for now, he just clings to the stories of his best friend, gone too soon. Like the day Tony was fighting a fire and a squirrely hose had him going every which way, trying to control the wayward nozzle.
I heard one of the rookies saying that Tony was in the fire and he was so happy he was dancing.
It wasn't really true. He wasn't really dancing. But you could believe it was true if you knew the gentle giant who would do so many things for his community and so many things for his brothers on that truck.
One of the reasons the chief felt so helpless is because he never got to see Tony in the hospital. Scenes like this, loved ones seeing each other only through glass, became so common last year. For some of you, it hits close to home. It certainly does for me, because this is my mom and my dad in April of 2020. 2 weeks after this picture, Dad was gone. But sadly, my story is not rare. Thousands never got that final touch, that last hug. The pandemic changed the way we say goodbye.
I would risk my own life if I could have got to spend like that day with my brother.
Jack Simmons of Naples is talking about his brother Don, who died from COVID in June. The two were buddies, the two youngest of 7.
My brother was in Houston, and he died in Houston, so I still don't have any closure as far as that goes. I didn't go to a funeral. They had a very small service.
Helping families get closure is something funeral directors at Harvey Engelhart in Fort Myers tell me became even more difficult to do.
It's hard enough dealing with the death of a loved one. You know, they say it's the most stressful time in a person's life. Throw in the pandemic, so I can't think of a worse time to have someone pass.
They never closed, but they knew they'd have to make adjustments on how people say goodbye safely. Many hoped those restrictions wouldn't last long, but we now know COVID stayed, and so did the grief.
It was difficult for a family to decide what to do, not really knowing if their family from up north could come to Florida or not.
So they started live streaming funerals, which gave some comfort, but not the face-to-face interaction some craved.
And sometimes that's all it is. It's not even about having the right words. It's literally just sitting next to someone and saying, let's just cry together and get it out.
And people haven't been able to do that.
No.
For some during the pandemic, the funeral was the last time people could see or say goodbye to a loved one.
It was so hard because families were not able to get into the hospital to see their loved ones. They weren't able to get into the nursing home. They may have been able to see their loved one through a window. And then the funeral home really became the last stop of where somebody could come in to say goodbye.
As for Jack, his closure comes through faith. His sister-in-law sent him his brother's Bible. It just so happened to be earmarked to a special verse.
So with you, now is the time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy.
And while it gives him peace, it doesn't mean the pain is gone.
Yeah, it's still, he's my brother. He's my brother. Like, there is nobody closer than that.
Jack's brother Don was one of many lives that COVID took from us in the last year. The kind of loss that feels almost impossible to recover from, especially in the cruel isolation the pandemic created. But tonight we also want to take you to one North Fort Myers neighborhood, reminding us that our sense of community is not gone and just how powerful a connection can be.
Inside this Fort Myers community sits a spot for John Jeunesse.
He would listen to his music and sit out there, and so everyone knew the Tan Man.
It sits empty in the grass where he'd lay to catch some sun.
He actually laid in the drainage ditch is where he put the chair.
Next to it grows a tree planted by his friends in his honor.
That's his table. We do scratch tickets.
Last March, what John thought was a COPD flare-up turned out to be COVID-19. He was one of the first people in Lee County to get the virus, making his daughter Lori one of the last let in to say goodbye.
I was trying to talk to him, and I know he knew I was there, but I don't know that he recognized what was happening.
After John passed, Lori left the hospital, immediately told to isolate. When she saw her mom for the first time, the two couldn't even hug.
I just felt lost.
Forced to deal with that loss in the darkness of quarantine, one group of guys still came knocking.
They really were there to pick up the pieces. And without them, I don't think we would have got through that first week.
You see, many of John's friends knew him from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I was the best man at John's wedding.
After John made Fort Myers his second home, his crew from up north followed. They all ended up in the same Tice Mobile Home Park.
It's devastated that he's not here anymore.
John is remembered for more stories than I could ever tell you.
And there wasn't an oldies song that John didn't know who sang it or what year it came out.
He loved Gronkowski, and when we watched the Super Bowl, we were laughing every time Gronk scored.
Every time he caught the ball, he'd be Gronk. Yep.
What would you say you miss the very most about him?
His laugh. He had the best laugh.
Of course, he loved his music, he loved his football, but most of all, he loved his wife, Tony.
He showed that love until his final moments.
Last thing he said as they were putting him into the ambulance, he said to his stepdaughter, Laurie, take care of my girl. I've got plenty of money. Make sure you take care of my girl.
The coronavirus took John from his girl Tony, their kids, grandkids, and his Fort Myers crew.
I feel like, part of us left.
Now, when his friends gather around their drinking table, those memories only become stronger.
That's where he's at, because it was closest to the food.
And as the family waits to hold a party,
I know we're going to have a party and we're going to celebrate him the way that he deserves to be celebrated.
they can do one thing together.
Well, we'd raise it to a great man that we've had many drinks, many a laugh with.
Go back to John's spot for a simple toast to honor a father, a husband, and a friend.
To John Janess.
When we look back at the last year, it is hard not to feel overwhelmed by loss. And it starts with the loss of life. We lost more than 500,000 Americans to the coronavirus, a word that for most of us we'd barely even heard of before last year. 500,000 Americans gone in 1 year. But we all lost something, even if we were lucky enough to be spared the loss of a loved one. People lost jobs, livelihoods, weddings, vacations, concerts, sporting events. We lost relatives we couldn't say goodbye to, and we couldn't grieve our loved ones together at funerals except over FaceTime. We felt loss everywhere the last year. But it's important to think about what we gained too, to focus on what we learned, what we accomplished, what we endured. We learned the value of a mask, the value of a single roll of toilet paper, the value of a simple hug. We accomplished so much evolving in the face of a virus that didn't care about our normal. We moved entire schools online, found a way to teach our kids through Zoom, kept companies afloat doing business in ways we never dreamed possible, as scientists rushed to create vaccines that could launch a COVID counterattack. And we all endured, lifting each other up during a year that at one time or another left all of us falling, afraid we would never find solid ground again. Just being here, despite the enormous weight this pandemic put on our shoulders, that alone feels like an accomplishment.
When we come back, a moment of hope from a Southwest Florida widow.
Oh, gosh.
It's the reveal you don't want to miss.
Our healthcare heroes felt the brunt of the pandemic as policies changed. Instead of just caring for patients, our healthcare professionals became our eyes and our ears in those hospital rooms.
But many now worry about what our frontline workers will have to mentally endure because of what they saw inside those hospital walls. Though there is a way that you and I can help. This story is all about eyes. Tim Griffith's eyes have seen so much. He first served as a chaplain in our military and saw soldiers die on the battlefield. Then he became a chaplain at Health Park Medical Center in Lee County. Different venue, but the same mission.
Being a chaplain it's all about being with people in crisis.
The last year, COVID created plenty of crisis at the hospital. Patients trying to fight this ferocious new virus and fight it alone.
I'm also the only human contact, the only friend that this person has.
Tim's job had never been more important. They were just craving human contact.
Yes.
Tim would talk to these patients inside their rooms, and they'd ask him what the weather was like outside. Be our eyes, they would say. Tim heard that a lot the last year, and not just from the patients.
You're my eyes. Just tell me what you see.
That's what the loved ones who couldn't visit those patients would beg from him too. A wife would ask about her husband in the hospital bed. What does he look like? What's going on in the room? Tim, you're my eyes.
I'm her only way of knowing how her husband is doing.
Sometimes the answer was, not well. But he wants you to know something else that his eyes witnessed. Doctors and nurses who became far more than medical professionals when there was nothing medically left to do.
Amazing people throughout this hospital who've taken it on their shoulders to sit with and to hold the hands of those patients.
So that when they closed their eyes for the final time, they didn't die alone.
So the question becomes, how will our health professionals bear that burden? Lee Health Dr. Paul Simeon says there is a big concern with our healthcare staff suffering from forms of post-traumatic stress.
It's hard to talk about it as post-traumatic because the trauma is still ongoing.
He says the full scope of damage in our hospitals isn't clear, but there is an opportunity to recover.
Now a lot of people are angry because they don't feel like they're getting adequate supports from the public.
And that support comes by wearing masks and social distancing.
And I think what healthcare workers are saying is we're exhausted.
And the best way to help is to come together as a community.
You know, these sorts of cultural riptides, these cross currents that are in our society, they really do make an impact on people who are taking care of one another. It makes a difference.
As we grapple with ways to support our healthcare heroes, Florida is getting closer to lightening that load.
Starting today, Florida teachers and Florida law enforcement officers 50 or older can get the vaccine. And as many others wait their turn in line, there is another way we can move forward.
ABC7's Jeff Harris is introducing us to an artist, reminding us the power behind the gift of grace and how applying paint to canvas can mean the world to another person.
This is Margaret Bayalis. And her story really starts by looking at what's on the other side of this canvas.
I've met so many people through this project.
In October, Margaret decided she wanted to use her gift as an artist to help families cope with loss.
I just felt a need to do something to address the numbers that were just growing every day.
So she started the Facebook group Faces Not Numbers.
That's when I came up with the idea of doing portraits and offering them to families who had lost loved ones at no cost.
It would be an understatement to say the response she got was just large.
To date, I've done over 40 portraits.
And the numbers keep growing, with requests coming in every day.
I'm doing this full time right now.
While a portrait might not sound like much, many families during this time have been forced to put off any kind of celebration of life, including the Worley family.
He was barbecuing and he came in with the chills and he was sick, flat out, absolutely sick.
Marianne says she knew the exact moment things took a turn for the worst for her husband, Skip. It was April of 2020, and just 15 minutes passed before Marianne got Skip from the grill to the ER.
So I would just sit in the parking lot, or I would do my walk around the hospital because I couldn't be with him.
Immunocompromised after losing a quarter of his lung to cancer, Skip's condition began to decline.
Everything was just so alone and unfair to him.
Admitted for only a few weeks, on May 9th, Skip passed away.
I was just a zombie. I just walked out and got in the car. I didn't talk to anybody or anything. It was inevitably, it was happening anyway.
As a Vietnam vet, Skip was buried without a proper military send-off.
He didn't get anything he wanted.
Until about 2 weeks ago, nearly 10 months since Skip passed away, Marianne, along with 140 family members and friends, finally were able to honor his life and legacy with a proper funeral.
We did it. And we did it well, so it was a great last memory.
But our story doesn't end there. While I was filming with Margaret, I asked one favor before meeting Marianne the following week.
We took it upon ourselves to actually send her a photo so that you could keep of Skip, and we wanted to give it to you.
Oh gosh, isn't that nice? Thank you. Oh, that's very nice, thank you.
And just hours before I arrived, Marianne got more hopeful news.
This morning I had 11 neighbors. Everybody was logged in. Everybody was trying to grab a spot, and somebody got one for me.
With the help of her community, she was able to get an appointment for a vaccine. For Marianne, it is yet another step in her battle to move forward as she continues to honor the life and legacy of her beloved Skip. In Charlotte County tonight, Jeff Harris, ABC7.
If you'd like to get in touch with Margaret, we've put her information on the ABC7 website.
Just click on the Get More tab. We'll be right back. And we end tonight with a promise. ABC7 is making a commitment to our community to continue to tell these stories of survival, these stories of recovery.
Everyone has a story out of the pandemic, and yours could inspire others. So send ABC7 your stories by using the hashtag #InspireUs. We'll highlight a story every week this month.
The last year definitely changed us, but maybe, just maybe, it made us stronger,
tougher, and better prepared for what's to come. Thanks for watching ABC 7.